Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Salesforce Musketeer. My name is Nikhil. In today's video, we are going to learn about OAuth and how we can connect one system with Salesforce system using OAuth. So let's proceed. What is a standard definition of OAuth? OAuth stands for Open Authorization. It is a standard designed to allow a website or application to access resources hosted by other web app on behalf of a user. So basically we can use OAuth for if any third party application, for example, a Java application, which wants to get resources from Salesforce or want to access data residing in Salesforce, then we can make use of OAuth to get data from Salesforce and show it on third party application. So OAuth 1.0 got replaced by OAuth 2.0 in 2012. OAuth 2.0 is an authorization protocol. It is a very important thing to remember that it does not provide authentication capability. It is not an authentication protocol. So what's the difference between authentication and authorization? Authentication gives the identity that who am I? What is my name? Authorization tells you what is your scope. After getting to know who you are, then it defines the scope. So for example, if you go to a hotel, the first thing you go is check in where you give your license or any identity proof. There they authenticate you. Once the authentication is done in a hotel, then they give you hotel key. That hotel key can be considered as an OAuth, which defines the scope. That tells you that which room you can go to, which is your own room. You cannot go to another room. So that is a one scope is defined. And it also tells you that you can use only common areas such as gym or library. So that scope here in this example, you can consider as a OAuth 2.0. For authentication, where I told you, give you an example that somebody checks your identity to tell who you are, that authentication can be provided by multiple ways. One is OpenID Connect, or we can use SAML. But in this video, we will consider only OAuth. Overview of OAuth, let's go with it. It is a framework that allows for secure way of system to establish trust with one another. The objective is to obtain an access token that can be used to to access protected resource without ever providing username or password to the other system. So basically, if third-party Java application wants to use Salesforce, and Salesforce here is considered as a protected resource that has data in it, like account data, leads data, and if Java application wants to get access of your resources like account data, and we don't want to give Java application username and password, then what we are left with? Then we can go with OAuth. There we don't have to provide them username or password, and they can use this framework to access data in Salesforce without username and password. So for system to system connect, we can think of OAuth. Let's go with the standard definition and some standard terms used on this website. So this thing we have already covered, that it stands for open authorization. It was replaced in 2012. It's an authorization protocol, not an authentication. Another thing to note here is that it uses access token. An access token is a piece of data that represents the authorization to access resources on behalf of end user. So that is the end goal of this OAuth 2.0, to get an access token. Access token here, once you get the access token, then you can access data in the protected resource. For example, once Java application gets the access token, then using that access token, they can get data from the Salesforce. It is very important to understand the roles we have in OAuth 2.0. We have 4 roles. The first is resource owner. So resource owner is a user or system that owns the protected resource and can grant access to them. So if you consider an example, when we open a workbench, the first thing it tries to do is it redirects us to a Salesforce login page where we have to enter username and password, and we provide our username or password. So in that example, we become a resource owner because we own that protected resource and we have a username or password. Now, what is a client here? So client here in the example I gave of workbench, the client is a workbench. So workbench is trying to get access to the protected resource. So the definition says the client is a system that requires access to the protected resource. To access resource, the client must hold the appropriate access token. So what's happened in the background? When you click on workbench, it becomes a client which wants to get data from Salesforce to show you whatever socle you provide, that data which it gets from Salesforce. To get that data, it needs an access token. And in order to get that access token, first it redirects us to Salesforce where we resource owner provide credential, and then it gets us back the authorization code. So here comes authorization server into play. The moment you provide credential of Salesforce, it goes back to authorization server, which is Salesforce here, and it gives us back authorization code. And once we get the authorization code, we go back to authorization server to get the access token. So if you read out here, it says this server receive request from the client for access token and issue them upon successful authentication. Authentication is when we get the authorization code by giving the user ID and password and consent by the resource owner. So authorization server exposes two endpoints, authorization endpoint. So this authorization endpoint is used to get the authorization code, and then another endpoint is token endpoint, which is used to get the access token. Once we get the access token from authorization server, then we go to resource server, which is Salesforce, because workbench is trying to get data from Salesforce, a server that protects the user resource and receive access request from client. It accepts and validates an access token from the client and returns the appropriate resource to it. Before we jump into demo, we need to be familiar with OAuth terminologies. The first thing we need to know is access token. It is a session ID and it is short-lived. So whole objective of this OAuth is to get access token. Once you have access token, once you are a bearer of this access token, then you can get access of the data residing in Salesforce. So this is the end goal, to get access token. But before getting access token, we have certain steps to take care of. The first step is to authenticate a user who is trying to get the data. So once authorization server authenticate a resource, then they give that resource a authorization code. Now using this authorization code, they will take further steps to get access token. Another thing to note, that access token is also short-lived, just like access token. Connected app is basically when Java application wants to connect with Salesforce, or any outside application wants to connect with Salesforce. For that application, we will create a connected app in the Salesforce, and we tell that it uses OAuth protocol to verify Salesforce user, and then this application will try to access Salesforce data. Now, our also objective for using OAuth is not to share username and password. Instead, we give them consumer key and consumer secret. So consumer key and consumer secret can be given to third-party application. We assuming that we can trust the third-party application. So if we are giving consumer key and consumer secret to Java, then we have to trust that. If we trust that application, then only we have to share this consumer key and consumer secret. So consumer key basically it's used for identification, that it tells that that it's a trusted application, and consumer secret verifies that part. Now, what is refresh token? Now, let's say that access token or the authorization code have been expired. Then in that case, you can use refresh token, which is long lived, to obtain a new access token. So in that process, a person does not need to authenticate himself or herself many times to get authorization code. Once they authenticate themselves, then they grab this refresh token, and using this refresh token they can keep getting access token uh, even after access token is expired. Now let's see what are the grant types in OAuth. I'll not go in detail of each grant types, but these grant types are used to determine what are the steps you client has to take to get the access token, access authorization. In our demo, I will be using this authorization code, where code means like I will be getting authorization code, and then I will provide that authorization code to get a refresh token and access token. Now if you just have a refresh token, then you can you already have a refresh token, then you can go with the refresh token grant. This device authorization flow is used when you want to authorize a mobile application or smart TV application, then you can use device authorization. So sometimes we can also use resource owner credential, where you have to share username and password. So in this case, we have a URL where you provide username, password, client ID, and client secret. Then in that case, the URL parameter types are different. So these are the types of OAuth flow. So if you guys are going for identity and access management certification, you must be knowing all these OAuth flows in detail. In today's video, we are only going to learn about web server flow. If you want to learn JWT or SAML, then in that case, please watch my another videos on that. I'm just going to give you an overview of OpenID Connect. To learn OpenID in detail, you please watch my next video on OpenID Connect, where I'm going to tell you in detail how we can use OpenID to authenticate a user. So as you know that OAuth only provides authorization, it does not provide you a way to authenticate. So OAuth is used in conjunction with OpenID Connect or SAML, so that you first authenticate a user and then authorize a user. So OpenID Connect can be used for authentication, alternate to SAML. It is another layer built on top of OAuth 2.0 protocol. So if there's a layer of OAuth which gives you uh, authorization, that gives you the scope, but for authentication we have OpenID Connect. Just if you remember in our example of hotel, where a person first checks in and then he is given a hotel key, so they are both used in conjunction, that user first is authenticated, then the user is authorized to use resources. It is it is helpful to verify a user. Response of OpenID Connect contains ID token value. It contains this ID token value contains the information about the user, like its name, its some profile data, like email address. So we can learn about that when we go with the OpenID Connect video. I've created this flow to explain you how OAuth works in the background. So in our demo also, when we will see how we are obtaining access token. So it's basically, these are the 4 steps happening in the background. So for example, if Cody wants to see accounts in Java application, and that accounts, all of those accounts reside in Salesforce, then how it is going to work. So for example, he's requesting Java application that I want to see all accounts, and let's suppose there's a button there on click of which the request is made. Now java.net application will redirect a user Cody to enter Salesforce username and password on Salesforce page, which is authorization server in our example. So once he enters the credential, and if those credentials are right, then we can say that Cody has been authenticated, and we know, hey, it's Cody. Now once we know that he has been authenticated, then authorization server will send back authorization and callback URL. So a callback URL means he will be returned back to his Java or .NET application. Just like once we go to Workbench, enter Salesforce username, password, and we go back to Workbench. Similarly, he will be sent back to Java or .NET application. But in background, he has not yet got the access token to get data from Salesforce, because he has only got authorization code. Now with authorization code, Java.NET application will send a request to get access token. Now authorization server at Salesforce side will send back access token as well as refresh token. Now once access token and refresh token has been given to a Java.NET application, then they will send another request with access token to get data back. Now with once they have access token, they can get the data. So here the accounts are sent back to Java application, and then those accounts can be shown to Cody. So very simple. It's 4 step. He clicked on a button basically requesting accounts to be shown. In background, Java application uh, sends basically a callback URL to Cody that to enter Salesforce username and password. Then authorization code has been generated, and then authorization code will be sent back from Java application to Salesforce to get access token. Once access token is been given, then they will use that access token again to get the data. So let's proceed further. So what's the benefits of OAuth? So the first benefit is that client does not have to save username and password. So back in times when we used to share username and password, then that username and password can be misused or can be hacked, and then your data will be compromised. But in OAuth we don't have to share username and password, and we can easily revoke a user who is accessing your OAuth. Who's accessing your data using OAuth. And we have easy authorization. You can easily define the scope in OAuth and what data they can have access to. These are some useful links. You can go to Trailhead. You can also make connected app and verify that you have made your connected app really good. And these are some endpoints which we are going to use. I'm going to show those endpoints provided by Salesforce. So if you remember the flow, then that Cody asked Java application to get accounts from Salesforce. So first step they did was to redirect Cody to Salesforce login page. So basically the first endpoint they used is authorized endpoint to get the authorization code based on the client ID and client secret. Once they get the authorization code, then they will use this endpoint to get access token. Token here means like they will get the access token and refresh token back. And I also told you that they can be easily revoked by using this endpoint. So we have other endpoints also which you can go through it, and you can have more understanding by reading these descriptions. So let's go back to our slide. Now in our demo we are going to see how we can use OAuth to get access token using Postman, and then we will see using OpenId, Heroku, Playground. We will see how we can use OpenID to also get access token, and then we can see how we can use Salesforce org A to connect with Salesforce org B using OAuth to get data. Let's jump into demo. The first thing what we are going to do here is we are going to create a connected app, thinking that third-party application is going to use that connected app to get access token to access the resources in our Salesforce system. So for that we'll go to setup and go to app manager and click on new connected app. Here as we are going to use Postman to get access token, so we will use Postman data access as a connected app name. You can give any name, and this is not mandate to give, so you can give logo, image. We can choose it from here also. Let's say wave, and I'll give it copy it and give it here. So one thing which is very important is to enable this OAuth, and then you have to give your third-party application callback. But as we are not using any Java application or .NET application, so what we are going to give here is the name here, the same name I'm going to give it here. Let's say I'll go to setup again and get a name from domain, my domain. So I'll use this one. OAuth to callback. Remember, don't give this copy this URL and for the getting the endpoint of for token or any authorized point. Use my domain, get the domain from my domain, and use this domain to get any authorization code or access token. Now this is very important. This is what OAuth is about, that we specify the scope. So we basically we authorize a user to have access to certain data in Salesforce system. So here we will say that okay, we will give access of APIs and some I'll say refresh token. Let me give that. I'm not going to give full access, and third access I'm going to give is OpenId. And I'm going to keep these checkboxes checked, saying that consumer secret is required for web server flow, and that is it. Very simple. I have just given the name and the scope and the callback URL, and I'm going to click on save. Now after doing that, it says the data is already there. Let me get _2 or I'll say demo and save it. Now I can get consumer ID. Let me give verification code. Now I got the consumer key and consumer secret. So if you remember the flow, first thing we need to get is the authorization code, and for that I can get the URL from Salesforce documents or even from the trailhead. So let me get this authorized, copy this and paste it here. So if you say I just need to replace this my company, my Salesforce from domain name, let me copy this name here, callback URL, and this redirect URI will become your callback URL. I will also copy this. Just check the the endpoint we are hitting here, authorized, to get the authorization code. So I will do copy.com this, and client ID I'm going to give it from here. Copy, and this is my client ID. That is it. And response type is authorization code. That's what we are looking for. So I'm going to go here and put it on URL. It didn't ask for user ID and password because I'm already logged in. Otherwise you have to provide credential. So if you remember the flow that where I said, let me open that PPT here one more time, where I said this Cody will ask for account, and then the third-party application will send Cody to authorization code where they will provide credentials. So we are at this stage where we have provided the credential and we are yet to get authorization code. So I click on allow, and I will get authorization code. So if you see above, this is the authorization code I got. I'll copy paste here and copy this code, because this is in, I need to decode this because this is encoded. I will click on decode, and I got the decoded one. We need to have this authorization code handy with us. Now what I will do is I will go to PostMan to get the access token. first thing is I need to provide the URL. So first thing I'm going to copy here is this tail.com. Let me copy this services, and then I will go to Trailhead, and let me see, what do we have? We should have a token endpoint. Yeah, this one. I'll copy it and put it here, not here. Postman. Okay, one thing important to know is you won't provide params here. You will provide params in body and choose this, and here you will give grant type, which is authorization code. Then you need to give code, which is your authorization code, and client ID, client secret, and redirect URI. That's it. This is what you need to provide. So grant type is authorization code, and this is what we have from here. Copy, and then I'll get copy and put it in the Postman. Then I'll get secret and again put it in the Postman. And redirect URI is same, and this should match with what redirect URI we have given on connected app. Otherwise this will give us an error that mismatch. So it should match with this one. So I'll go there and put redirect URI. So make sure this is changed to post, and then you click on send. So if you see here, this is what we got, access token, and using access token, now third-party application can get the data from the any table, account, or any data they want. Now I will move ahead to the second part of demo, where I'm going to use OpenID Playground to connect with connected app, and then how we can get authorized access token. So first I'll do is I'll go to setup and quickly create a connected app. I'll click here, app manager, and then I'll click let's say OpenID Connect demo. I'll give my email. I'll only give the basic things, and I will copy it from here because callback URL must match. Then I will give full access, OpenID, and then refresh token. The only basic thing I'm giving right now, and click on continue. Now I will try to get consumer details. Let me get this. So I will give consumer key here, and then I will give consumer secret. So same thing which we did in Postman, that before Postman I provided this in URL and got the authorization code. So let's see if we get the same thing here. As we give full access, so we are getting lots of accesses, even pardot and all. So I will click on allow. So if you see here, we got the authorization code here. This is our authorization code, and this is the same request URL which I provided on URL. And now when I click on next, they will give the authorization code and try to get here access token. So we got the access token now, and if you see, we have got ID token also, which gives you the information of the user. So if I click on next, so I will try, it will give me some user information. So this gives me the user information of mine, that this is my name, email. So this is what I got from ID token. So this is how we connect with OpenID Connect Playground to get the refresh token and access token. Now we are going to move third part of our demo, where I'm going to connect Salesforce to Salesforce. What I'm going to do here is, it's very important to understand the first thing here, that I'm going to have Salesforce org A and Salesforce org B. So I want Salesforce org B to get data of Salesforce org A. So here it is a service provider, and inbound is going to happen here. And we want to see data on Salesforce org B, which is going to fetch from org A. So here it is a client, or outbound is going to happen here. So when Salesforce is acting as an inbound, so it means we have to create a connected app here for Salesforce org B. Now Salesforce org B, when we are going to use code to get data from Salesforce org A, we will store the client ID and client secret key in our auth provider, which I'm going to show in demo. And then I'm going to use name credential, which is going to use OAuth here, and then I'm going to get data from the Salesforce org A. So for that, let me connect to Salesforce org A first. So let's consider Resource Panda is a Salesforce org A. I'll mention this here, which is Resource Panda, and then I will go to app and click on click on new connected app. Here I'm going to provide Salesforce to Salesforce connect, and going to provide my email ID, and I'm going to choose enable OAuth here, HTTPS. I'm just going to give any placeholder right now, which is going to be .com. I'm going to change this anyway, so I'm going to give it anything right now, and I'm going to give full access and open API and refresh token. Then now I'm just going to click on save. So this is what we have created on Salesforce org A. We have created connected app. We are done with this step. Now I'm going to go to Salesforce org B and create auth provider first. So for Salesforce org B, I'm using this resourceful koala. I'm going to copy this and put it here. Org. Now I'm going to set up. I'm going to write OAuth provider. This is going to verify the identity, and here I'm going to click on new. Now what is the provider type here? So I'm going to connect Salesforce with Salesforce, so I'm going to use Salesforce here, and Salesforce, let's see, what was it, Salesforce Panda, right? So I'm going to write Salesforce Panda, and what's the consumer key? Let me go there and grab that. No, this is not the one. We are going to use this one, Salesforce to Salesforce Connect. Now I will copy this and give it to my auth provider here. And I'm going to copy this and give it consumer key here. So this I can change it and give it to this one. Let me go to copy this part, and here I'm going to write this services OAuth to authorize. I'll copy this part and paste it here, and here I just need to give services OAuth token. So I'll copy this service OAuth. Instead of this, I'll just write token. Default scope, I can put refresh token full to give the full access of refresh token, and this I will tell you later, but right now I'm just going to click on save. Now we got this callback URL. I'm going to copy this callback URL here and go back to our Salesforce org A, where we provided a placeholder. I'm going to edit this and replace this with this callback URL as it should match. Now what we have done so far, we have created connected app, we have created auth provider. Now I'm just going to use name credential. Let's see, I'm gonna go here, right, name credential, and I'm going to create new legacy, Salesforce Panda, and the URL I need to provide here. I'm going to copy this URL from here. We are providing a URL of Salesforce org 1. Remember, I don't want to provide the lightning one. I want to provide this my.salesforce.com. There's a difference. So lightning one will not work. So I will go here and provided this one. This looks good. I don't need this backslash. And here I'm going to provide named principal and OAuth 2.0. So OAuth provider is what we created, a Salesforce Panda, and here the scope is refresh token full, and I'm going to click on save. See, one thing I forgot to show you. Let me do it again. Salesforce Panda connect, and URL I'm going to provide here is this one. Here I'm going to write here this.com and identity type name principal and OAuth 2. So if you see here that, let me give it Salesforce Panda here, authenticate provider and refresh token full. So if you see here, start authentication flow on save. The moment I click on save, then it will try to get me authenticated by that. I have to provide the username and the password of Salesforce org A. Let me try to get Salesforce org A credential, and this is as it is my playground. So I'll go here, get your login credential, reset my password. Okay, let me get it from my Gmail. So I got the password reset. Let me go there and provide username and password. Nope. So ask, okay, let's allow it, and it will show that I've been authenticated. So it shows that I've been authenticated. Now we can use this name credential and get the data from the Salesforce org A. Remember, this is our Salesforce org B. Let me show you. So this is our Salesforce org B Salesforce Koala, and we have done this. Now I'm just going to use HTTP code to get the data from Salesforce org A. Let's say I need to get this account ID data, which is Express Logistic. Let me get this ID and put it here. So I'm at Salesforce org A now, B, where I'm just going to write a code in developer console to get the account ID. This is the account ID data which we want. Now I'll write the code here. HTTP request req is equal to new HTTP request. I'll copy this code. So I'll copy this code from here. One second, restart. So I'll copy this code from here and restart. So I'll copy this code from here and then paste it here. If you see here that I provided my callout name, which is Salesforce Panda Connect, and then service data 32, and then I can also use version 55 as object account, and then I can use this ID. So I provided this URL service data 56 as object account, and this is the ID I'm getting from Resource Panda. This is the ID, Express Logistic. Now I'm going to Salesforce org B. If you see, this is my Salesforce org B koala, and I'm using this named credential, and then I'm going to click on execute. But before that, I'll tell you what we are doing here is we are creating a HTTP request, setting the endpoint, which is using OAuth, and then setting the method as get. So this is what we are doing, because it 302 is saying that we have found this, but we need to send the request again, and that's why we are doing this. And after that, we are just showing the get body. So here we will see that we will get the account details. If you see here, we have got the account detail where we got the billing street and everything from the org A. So this completes our demo, and this completes our video on OAuth. If you want to see more videos on OpenID Connect and SAML, then please watch our more videos on Salesforce Musketeer. Thank you.